Hey guys, Phil here, and I thought today I'd show you a little something about how I do my 3D scanning. And so right now I've got this rock here, and it's pretty good because it's a nice overcast day, so we're going to have no shadows. And that's something that's important, of course, because your final 3D scene may not necessarily have shadows in the spot where the shadows are on the rock. So this also will not work on things that are transparent like glass, or shiny or reflective, because the software is going to get confused by all the reflections. So I'm going to turn around to my other camera and we'll show you how I take the pictures. And when you're first taking the pictures, the first thing you want to do is get right up close so you're filling as much of the frame as possible. Then you want to tap on, well, if you're using a regular camera, you can just focus, or if you're using your phone, you can tap on the screen to make sure that you get nice and sharp. And I'm going to start low, making sure I get everything in this frame. And I'll take the picture there, and then I'm going to move up just a little bit and take another picture. Then I'll take like one step to the side, shoot another picture, and drop down low, take another picture, take one more step to the side, and take another picture, and drop up and take another picture. And you're going to continue doing that until you get all the way around the object. And this could end up being around 50 or 60 pictures. Then you're also going to make sure you get some pictures from up high. And if your object's large enough, you can even get and stand up on top of it. I see, unfortunately, somebody's graffitied on this rock, and it's only been here about a week. But you want to make sure to get every single angle. In fact, getting at least 2 shots from every angle. So something like that, and then move over here and get something like that. So I'm going to take all the pictures, and then I'll switch over to showing you on my computer what we do. Here on the computer side of things, you're going to be installing 3 programs, and I'll include links to those in the description. The first is Visual SFM. The next is CMVS for Windows, and the third one is MeshLab. Now, as you can see here, we have Visual SFM, and you don't really have to actually install that. You just download it and empty it into a folder. And the same thing with CMVS. You're just going to download it and drop it into the same folder as Visual SFM. And then MeshLab, you'll have to install that separately. And so the first thing we're going to do in Visual SFM is, well, first of all, you have to take all your photos off of your camera and put them on your hard drive somewhere. Then we're going to open them up in this folder with a plus sign icon, which means to open multiple images. And you can see I've already got them all here. So I'm just going to select the first one and then hit Control A to select the rest. Then I'll click Open. And it takes a few seconds to load them up. Okay, now they're all loaded, and I can use my mouse wheel to zoom them out, and I can see all of them there. And the next thing we're going to do is to click this button that looks like a kind of an X made out of 4 arrows, and that is Compute Missing Matches. And so we'll just click that, and we can see on the side here that it's gradually going through all of the images. Well, first I think it just goes through and looks at each of them. Then when it's done that, in a moment, we'll see that it starts comparing. Here we go. Now it starts comparing the images and finding mismatching points in each of the images. You'll see the number and then end and another image and how many matches it finds. So this can take a few moments, so I'll pause the recording while we wait. Okay, we're all done the calculations, and it doesn't really look like much has changed, but we can see the huge list here showing it has done a whole lot of work. So next thing we're going to work on is we're going to click this double arrow, which says Compute 3D Reconstruction, and you can see it already starts building the model. And it's actually just making a point cloud, but you can see it's adding the cameras it's the positions where I was standing when I shot each of these pictures. And just watch it for a moment. It can take a few minutes. We'll watch it for a moment, and you can actually rotate this around with the right mouse button. You can see as it's adding. So it's actually pretty cool to watch, but it can take some time. So I'll pause the recording. Okay, that was actually pretty quick. And you can see we can rotate around and see the whole point cloud now. And if you zoom out, you can actually look around and see some areas where, like around here, where maybe I could have taken a few more pictures, and especially down low. I really should have shot a lot more pictures down low, but it'll be alright. And you can see how a lot of the point cloud is missing down there. It's because there's pictures missing that I didn't take. So the next thing we're going to do is that CMVS program that you should have installed into the same folder as Visual SFM. And that's that button right here. So we're going to click that, and it'll ask us to save the file. So I'm just going to give it a file name. I'll call it rock video, not a rock music video, video about an actual rock. And now it'll start doing the calculations. And this will go for a little bit, maybe a minute or two. But then it tells you that it gives you a little bit of information, and then it says this will take a little while. Please wait. And they're not joking. It can take 20, 30 minutes, maybe more. That's the time when you go make yourself a sandwich, or even better, go out for a walk and get some exercise while you wait. Here it is. This may take a little more time waiting. And yeah, so I'm just going to pause the recording, and then I will go do something else. And I'll come back. Okay, so it finished, and as you can see from the bottom of the log here, it took about 20 minutes. Of course, that'll all depend on how fast your computer is, and if you use the version of Visual SFM that's made for NVIDIA CUDA, that will speed things up a lot because it's using your graphics processor as well. So it doesn't look like much happened, but if you hit the Tab key, you can see now you've got pretty much your whole model there, and some of the gravel even too. And so that's pretty much it for Visual SFM. If you zoom in, you can see this actually is just a point cloud, but it's just very dense. So when you zoom out, you can't even tell it's points for the most part. So now we're going to move over to Mesh Lab. And so you don't even have to save anything because you already chose that file for where to save it to. And so it's already been saved there. In fact, if you look in here, you can see there isn't even an option to save because it's already been saved there. Okay, now I'll switch programs and I'll be right back. Here in Mesh Lab, the first thing we're going to do is go up to this icon of a folder with some stack of papers in it. And that is to open the project file, and here it is right here, rockvideo.nvm, which was created by our last program. And we'll open that up, and it'll take a few seconds. Alright, there it is. And now we can use our left mouse button to rotate this around, and for some reason it always comes up upside down. So I need to rotate it around so it's facing right side up. And you can use a mouse wheel to scroll or to zoom in, and the middle mouse button to pan. So we'll just position it in the middle. And you can see our point cloud there. It's looking pretty good. So the first thing we're going to do next is to press this stack of papers, which is the layers panel. And we can see we've only got one layer there because we just have one object. And next, we're going to go up to Render and Show Camera. And we can see right in here, it gets added. And you can see all the cameras from the previous program are now on here. And you can see the little cone showing what direction it's pointing is very tiny. You can adjust that if you want. You can change the scale factor. Say it's at 0.004 now. So we can change it, say, 0.007. And they're a little easier to see. You don't really need to see them. It's just, a visual representation. But yeah, so we don't actually need that point cloud right there. So we can just hide it by clicking the eye icon on its layer. And next thing we're going to do is come up here to File and Import Mesh. And now, right in that same folder, we have our rockvideo.0.ply. And here it is, upside down again, of course. Let's reposition it and zoom in. There we go, it's looking nice. Okay, and so we have a lot of this gravel stuff from the ground that got picked up, and we don't really need all that since we're just focusing on the rock. So this part's kind of annoying, but you kind of have to do it. We're going to come up here to this kind of rectangle option, and that is the rectangular selection tool for selecting these points. And you can see they turn red when they're selected. And you want to select as much of them as you can without actually getting anything from the rock itself. And you don't have to go crazy getting into all the way in there. You can just get close. And then we're going to select this button with the red X on it, and that deletes all of those. And then we just have to repeat this process until we get rid of all the stuff we don't want. And it goes pretty quick. But it is kind of annoying that you have to use a rectangle. So therefore it means you can't just drag closely around it like you would with a lasso. You have to do multiple little rectangular cuts. But it doesn't take too long. Now see, we've got this problem here. Sometimes, for some reason, the top layer gets selected instead of the one you want. So I'm going to go back and select that one. There we go. So you just always have to keep an eye on that and make sure you've got the correct layer selected. And I'm just going to rotate this around a bit so that I can get some nice straight sides to use this stupid rectangle with. Ooh, that's awfully close. I'm going to click away from that. I wonder if I can... Now I can hold Shift to minus and deselect some of these because they're awfully close to the rock. Yeah, I want to make sure that I don't actually hit anything in the rock because that would be bad. And once you've got all the gravel stuff that you don't want deleted, don't forget this stuff up here that for some reason is floating in space. That shouldn't be too hard to knock that out. There's one or two selections and you're good to go. Okay, there's one. Try getting some of these smaller ones. Okay, that's pretty good. quickly look around, make sure there's nothing else floating, such as this one right here. I'll just do a quick little selection and delete that. Okay, so that looks like that's pretty much everything we need right there. Now, our next step is to go up to Filters and come down here to Point Set. And then all the way down the bottom is Surface Reconstruction Poisson. And the original tutorial where I read said to set this at 10. I find 10 works. I've been using 12 recently. It seems to work just as well. And then the next one is set at 7. And then the other two you can leave them at 1. So now we'll just click Apply. And this will take a little while, so I will pause the recording while we wait. So the calculation is finished, and as you can see, it's not quite right. We've got a little problem in here. So I'm going to delete that one. I'll just right-click it and delete current mesh. And I'm going to go in there and make sure the correct layer is selected. And I'm going to go in and make sure I delete some more of this gravel. Just to make sure it's nice and close in there. Just try to get it real quick. Should be pretty good. I can be a little bit of a perfectionist, so I'm trying to get as close as I can without actually touching the rock. Alright, here's the end. That should do it. Yeah, that should do it. So I'm going to try that again. And we'll do Filters, Point Set, Surface Reconstruction Poisson. And again, 12, 7, and leave the ones. And then I'll click Apply. And of course, again, I will pause the recording while we wait for that to finish. Okay, we got that fixed. If you ever have any problems with that, just go ahead and restart MeshLab. And sometimes that can just really solve some simple problems. So now we can hide our PLY mesh. And you can see you've got the nice rock model. And you really got some nice detail in there. You zoom in, you can really see some cool stuff. But you will notice some of the areas where we didn't get the good photos. It'll just be smooth. But that's not too bad, really. Once the texture gets applied, you can hardly see that at all. So speaking of the texture, let's get that going. So first thing I'm going to do is come up here to Filter and Selection. And all the way down, I'm going to look for Select Non-Manifold Edges. Oh, and here we go again. I had the wrong layer selected. So we're going to look at Filters, Selection, Select Non-Manifold Edges. And we'll just click Apply. And you don't always have any, but in the event that you do, it's better to just go ahead and try this anyway, just in case. It's just a little bit of cleanup. Now, I don't see any, but just in case they're hidden, I'm going to go ahead and hit Delete. Okay, and that takes care of that step. And the next step is pretty easy. We'll go to Filters and Texture, and then down here, Parametrization I think that's what it is, parameterization plus texturing from registered rasters. It's a mouthful. But what that does is it creates a UV map for you. That's a parameterization. And then texturing from rasters generates a texture based on all of the photos. So you set the texture size, 1024, okay, but I'm going to pick 2048 because you can always scale it down later, so why not? And the texture name, I'll just leave it at texture.png. And everything else, you can just leave it. And I'll move this out of the way so we can see when it's done. And then I'll click apply. And we'll just wait for a few minutes. And there we have it with our textures all ready to go. I'll just close that window. And let's give it a once over, have a little look at it. And some of those textures, they came out real nice looking. And of course we even got that little bit of graffiti, whatever that says. Yeah, a lot of that looks real nice. And of course we didn't get anything on this blob at the bottom, but you can just delete that in whatever 3D software you're going to be using with this. Okay, and that's pretty much it for 3D scanning our rock. Now, as far as exporting, all you have to do is File and Export Mesh As. And here's the folder I'm dropping it in. I'll just call it Rock Video. And I am going to save it as a Collada file. I've tried a few of these different formats, and for some reason in Lightwave 3D, which I use, Collada is the only one that really worked well. So I'll save that, and now it asks me to for some simple texture stuff, and I can just ignore all that and just click OK. And then it saves out the model, very high-res model, by the way, along with all the textures on a single image. Okay, so real quickly, I thought I'd show this in Lightwave, loading up that rock object. So I'm going to go to File and Load Object, and here's the DAE Collada file. I'll just double-click that, and it takes a few seconds to load because it's such a high, dense object. Okay, there we go. And with Collada objects in Lightwave, it always asks if you want to load each object on a separate layer. Of course, this only has one object, so we can just continue and give it another couple seconds. And there we go. Okay, and it is off-centered and upside down, so I'm going to press F2 to center it. And there it goes. And then from the side view, I'm going to press R to rotate it 90 degrees. And I'll press R one more time. And there it goes. And now you do have to load the texture onto it, which just open the surface editor and click T in the color option, and set the projection to UV, set the UV map to the only map that's available. And then for the image, we're going to load image, and in our folder we can scroll down, and here it is, the texture.png. And there we go, and there it is applied to the model. And there it is. So now if you're actually going to use this in anything, Now I can tell you right now this is over 3 million faces, polygons. So if you're going to actually use it in anything, you might want to bring it into something like 3D Code and do some retopology on it. The 3D Code's automatic retopology is really great for this. It just perfectly does it. So that's the end of my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned a lot. This can be a lot of fun to play with, and it can be actually pretty helpful for some projects. From one of my last projects, I ended up scanning an entire hillside. So you don't just have to scan single objects, you can scan in the walls in your room. So it doesn't have to be surrounding an object, it can be surrounding you. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up and leave me some comments if you learned anything or if you have any questions. And thanks for watching.